There we go. So this meeting will be recorded and saved on the Community of Practice website at the conclusion of the meeting, and we'll let you know when that happens should you want to share the recording or the slides, which are already posted, with any of your colleagues. If your first or last name is not listed in the participant panel as your name, please right-click on your name and change it to include your actual name. Sometimes if you received the link to this meeting from one of your colleagues, perhaps they forwarded you their link, you might be showing up as their name rather than your own. So for our attendance and to make sure that we can contact you properly at the conclusion of the meeting, please make sure that your name is reflecting your actual name so that Hannah can grab you in attendance. If you feel comfortable and are able to today, please feel free to enable your video so that we can see each other. We are going to be screen sharing for the majority of the meeting, but still nice to see a couple faces. And if you do need to step away or take a call or anything, feel free to turn off your video. You will be muted upon entry, and if you have a question, feel free to unmute yourself or use the electronic raise hand feature, which I'll tell you about in a second. If you were on the meeting super early, you heard me not realize that I was unmuted when I was managing my allergies with a really nice nose blow, and I want to thank the person that said bless me for that, because usually I'm really good at turning my sound off when I need to blow my nose, but it escaped me this morning. So don't be like me, make sure you're muted when you don't want to be heard. So the raise hand feature is going to be on the right side of your screen. If it's not at the bottom of your screen, there's kind of a participant tab, a chat tab. I'd recommend having the chat tab open at least, and then at the top of that, you'll have a little blue hand that looks kind of like this hand, except it's blue. And you can click on that and that'll pop up for us that you have a question. So if you have a question, you can use that, or you can feel free to chat those in. And during the question and answer part, if you would like to verbally share your questions, I'll be calling on you. And if you chat them in, we may read them on your behalf or ask you if you'd like to share them yourself to engage in the discussion. As I said, please introduce yourself in the chat. Your name and your organization. And as I also said, if you're experiencing any technical issues, please privately chat me. So you can do that in the chat box by clicking the 2 and where it says everyone, just change that to me. It will say Adelaide Murray host. It should be at the top because I'm the host, but if you have any trouble, let me know. All right, Hannah, can you go to our next slide, please? So today, my colleague Hannah Lessels will be advancing the slides for most of the meeting. So just thanking you for your patience there, as we'll have some delays and as our presenters let Hannah know that the slides need to be changed. So to make sure you're in the right place, this is the Prevention Community of Practice. The topic of the meeting today is electronic nicotine delivery systems, also known as ENDS, with New Hampshire resources and youth engagement presentations. Next slide, please, Hannah. So I wanted to welcome you all. Usually if we were in person, we'd probably go around the room and say who was here, and you'd all be talking and networking and chatting. And this is our first Prevention Community of Practice that is fully remote. It is not our first community of practice that is remote, so you can thank the MAT Community of Practice for being that guinea pig for you. Now we've done a couple. We think we have it pretty well figured out, but again, thank you for your patience as we figure out what it's like to be all remote, doing something that we really like to do in person, collaboratively, and really discussion based. So thank you all for joining us on this journey. Next slide, please, Hannah. So just a reminder that the purpose of the Community of Practice is to serve as a vehicle for you all, the prevention workforce, to increase your best practice knowledge related to effective prevention, build collegiality and professional mentoring among all of you, those delivering prevention services, improve communication between and within systems of care addressing substance misuse, and to promote a recovery and resiliency-oriented set of principle and practice constructs. Next slide, please. The way in which we try to achieve this purpose for you all is through various mechanisms. So we have our kind of big systems focused group meetings, which is what we're having today. We offer resources and tools through the New Hampshire Center for Excellence website, which you all should have access to, but I'll also put in the chat in case you're new. We also have an email-based discussion group called a Google group, which you guys are really great about using and sharing resources. If you are not a member of the Google group, please put that in the chat, let me know, feel free to email me, and we'll make sure to get you added. And that's a great way, almost like a listserv, to reach out to all of the members of this community of practice, ask them questions, let them know about your events, let them know about helpful resources that you found, You guys share a lot of good stuff through there. And then also technical assistance is available through the New Hampshire Center for Excellence. And we hope that that will lead to knowledge sharing, collective learning, and problem solving for the prevention field. Next slide, please, Hannah. So what we're going to do today is we're almost at the kind of end of our getting settled time and our welcome time. Our meeting today is going to be focused on two really awesome presentations. The first is going to be from Jess Morton at the New Hampshire Tobacco Prevention and Cessation Program. She's going to cover a lot of really great information about New Hampshire resources, about some research they've been doing about youth attitudes about ENDS, and some really great opportunities and campaigns that she has for resources that are able to share. And then we're going to move to Dover Youth to Youth, which if you're not familiar with, I'm really excited for you to get to know them on this meeting. That's going to be youth presenters from Dover in middle and high school that are going to come on and talk to us about all of the really awesome policy related work and engagement work and community work that they do related to tobacco, nicotine, ENDS, and cigarette use. And then I'll pop on again just at the end to let you know about our new evaluation process now that we're all remote. We still want to offer you those CPS credits and get those evaluations of the meeting. So I'll let you know about our new remote process for that. Next slide, please. And then this is my last one. I'll be quiet after this. Just want to remind you of our objectives for today's meeting. So we hope that by the end of today's meeting, you will be able to identify tobacco prevention and cessation resources here in New Hampshire, describe New Hampshire youth attitudes about electronic nicotine delivery ENDS, and apply strategies for engaging New Hampshire youth in ENDS prevention and policy initiatives through those presentations I mentioned. So with that, I am going to have us go to the next slide and introduce Jess Morton. Jess works at the Tobacco Prevention and Cessation Program at the New Hampshire Division of Public Health Services at the Department of Health and Human Services. And so I'll hand it over to her to begin her presentation. And just as Jess gets started, as a reminder, please feel free to chat in any clarifying questions or questions that you might have for Jess as she gets going. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, Adelaide. I am so excited to be here today. I've been to a number of the community of practice presentations over the last year, and specifically the one about getting to why was one of my favorite presentations. And so if that presentation spoke to you, I definitely want to chat with you if you want to move that needle forward in New Hampshire. But today I'm going to focus my talk on electronic nicotine delivery systems and the changes that have happened in New Hampshire over the last couple of years. And surprisingly, there has been a lot of developments since 2018, if not even before that. Next slide, Hannah. So for today's discussion, these are going to be the topics that I'm going to focus on. I think in today's society, we can't do anything without talking about COVID-19. So I'm going to give you a few key takeaways that the Centers for Disease Control have provided the national tobacco programs with. And then I'm going to jump into some data from the 2019 Youth Risk Behavior Survey. I'm hoping some of you may have seen some of the data, but if you haven't, this will be new information, as well as some trend data in terms of electronic vaping products. Then I'm going to jump into the formative assessment that the tobacco program has been working on for the last couple of years. I'll give you some data from the results of that survey, as well as talk about the New Hampshire Partners Against Youth Vaping in Schools that formed and was instrumental in writing a letter and also creating this vape resource list for schools and for the general public. I'll also share with you about our tobacco quit lines, which you're probably familiar with 1-800-QUIT-NOW, but if you haven't heard of My Life, My Quit, which just came online in New Hampshire in October, I'll be sharing resources about that tobacco cessation opportunity for you. And then finally, I'll also be sharing a sponsorship opportunity that the tobacco program would love to offer to as many of you as possible. It's a short timeline, and I apologize for that, but hopefully you can jump in and receive the funding to do the sponsorship. Next slide, Hannah. So in terms of the key takeaways with COVID-19 and tobacco, when COVID-19 started for the tobacco programs across the United States, we all felt that it had to have been, there has to be some sort of greater risk for those that are using tobacco, whether it's conventional cigarettes or it's vaping products. So we started marketing that information that way. However, within the last couple of weeks, the CDC sent out some key takeaways. So I'm just going to review those briefly. So cigarette smoking can suppress the immune system and cause heart and lung diseases. We all know that. But a person who smokes may be at greater risk and may have a harder time recovering from COVID-19. I also learned this morning, I'm not sure if this is new information or not, but also those that have COPD do have a harder risk, as well as those with asthma, diabetes, and a number of other diseases. But what we don't know is the relationship between the use of e-cigarettes or vaping products and COVID-19. That is still uncertain. So the CDC isn't wanting us to necessarily market that vaping can cause or is a cause of a harder risk for recovery. But the one thing that CDC and the other states have said is that this is really a great time to quit using tobacco, whether it's vaping or conventional cigarettes. And so 1-800-QUIT-NOW, which is a resource that's online through the telephone, text messaging. And so there are a number of ways to get those resources. And this is a really great time for people to quit. Next slide, please. So some of the marketing and media that we've developed over time, which some of you probably have seen because I've shared it through the Google groups, just keeps clicking through, Hannah. Maybe click once or twice. The first slide is just the first image that we used, and we did talk about vaping back in March. If you click it again, it'll go to the other message that we used. So one was for adults and one was for youth. And then if you click it one more time, this is our April messaging, which really focused just on smoking instead of specifically about vaping and cigarette use. So that's a little bit about COVID-19 and tobacco. I'm now going to jump into the Youth Risk Behavior Survey information. Next slide, Hannah. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, it's a survey that's done every 2 years. Vaping products were first asked during the 2015 Youth Risk Behavior Survey. And so we've had 2 years worth of data, but we're really excited to see 3 years worth of data because now we can do some trending. And so back in 2015, when we got the results, we were really concerned in New Hampshire because that level was a lot higher than the national average, which I believe was at like 10 or 12%, whereas we were at 25%. So you can see it did jump quite a bit in 2019, and we weren't surprised by that because of the increase in Juuls, as well as other products that have come on the market since 2017. And I think you all can attest to that you've seen in your communities. Next slide. So we're just going to run through some data. Hopefully you can see it. I know for me, it's a little bit hard to see, and I'm going to see if I can pull up this slide a little bit bigger. There we go. So looking at the slide, so this is basically, I'm going to give you some demographics of trend data on vaping products. So from left to right, it's 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. The color of the bars, the orange bar is 2015 data, the pink bar is 2017, and then the blue bar is 2019 data. And so if you're familiar with other data related to tobacco use and youth, over time, as they go from 9th grade to 12th grade, you see that increase in use, which we see that also with e-cigarettes. What I think is really interesting is kind of the 9th grade 2019 data, which is at 23.4. But then if you look at the 10th grade 2017 data, it's at 22.8. And so in my head, I'm thinking if 9th grade data is already at 23.4, which was similar to what it was in 2017 for 10th grade, what is it like for those in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade? So I think it'll be interesting to know how much use is going on in the younger grades. And I think a lot of you are already familiar and already seeing some use at younger grades. Next slide. This next slide is showing the vaping products by sex. The program, if you eliminate the blue bars, you can see that mostly males are more likely to use vaping products. However, in 2019, we see more of a leveling off. And so it's kind of comparable in terms of males and females using the devices. On the left-hand side of the slide is just the total population. The males are in the middle, and then the females are on the right, if everybody can see that okay. Next slide, Hannah. This next slide is about race and ethnicity. And so on the left-hand side is Blacks, in the middle is Hispanics, and on the right is whites. And in terms of the data and what's statistically significant over the last couple of years, this is really the only slide that we could really see a statistically significant difference. So you can see that Hispanics are more likely to use electronic vaping products in New Hampshire than other races. So potentially in the future, it might be worth taking a look at, first of all, where this population lives, and then looking at marketing and doing some additional education to that population. I'm trying to think of what other things are noticeable, but that was really the big noticeable thing. But with all of these slides, you'll see an increase in the numbers for 2019. Next slide, Hannah. So that's just an overview of Youth Risk Behavior Survey data. We got that data about 2 weeks ago. We do have a data brief on youth ends use, which I can share after I do my presentation in the chat. We will be updating that data brief with 2019 data as the year goes on, because we will have data based on public health region, which might help some of you. If you need the data though, my first suggestion would be to reach out to the school, which maybe all of you are familiar with, but certainly getting that data by school would be a recommendation. I think that's all I have on that part. So I'm going to switch over to the primary prevention addressing ends use among high school aged youth, which is our formative assessment. We were lucky enough to be able to get over $200,000 in general funds for the last couple of years to do some work on primary prevention. Governor Sununu felt it was definitely a need and something that we can move forward on. So in order to move forward, we first needed to estimate the size of the peer crowds in New Hampshire, whether a lot of hip hop people or popular crowds, or who was using the electronic nicotine delivery systems. Although we anecdotally thought that it might be like even across the different peer crowds, but we still had to get that data in order to be able to develop our media and messaging. The last thing we wanted to address on this survey was also estimating the knowledge, attitudes, and beliefs related to ends use for each peer crowd. Next slide, Hannah. So I'm just going to run through some results from this survey. And unfortunately, you know, we already have this youth risk behavior survey. So ideally, it would be great to add these peer crowd questions, which were images that we used, to the youth risk behavior survey. But the way that the survey is run right now, it just wasn't possible to add those images. But eventually down the road, if we're able to do that, that would be great, because a ton of other programs that have questions on the youth risk behavior survey would be able to identify which peer crowds are more likely to use the different products. So we did a convenience sample across the state using digital media, so Facebook, Instagram, to do some surveying. We got 2,200 respondents in the ages of 12 to 18. What was really amazing is 221 out of the 234 towns and cities across the state did participate in the survey. Our results showed that 53% reported an ends use. So if you saw that, remember the data from a couple of slides, it was at 33%. So we're a little bit higher than the average for the YRBS, but not too bad. What I felt was really interesting is that 56% use 2 to 3 times per day. And that may not be high, but for me, it feels high. The more they're going to be using the different kinds of products, especially if they're using a Juul, the more likely they are to be addicted to the products. So it's just something to consider. In this peer crowd data, you can see by the pie chart that there really isn't anything statistically significant by peer crowd. In terms of what unassigned means, I'll just review that. That means that we couldn't identify whether or not they were probably in more than 2 or 3 different peer crowds. So we couldn't assign them to a specific one. at this time. But overall, there wasn't any kind of noticeable peer crowd that we saw. Next slide. And I will tell you that CHI is the organization that we contracted with to do this work. And they've been working with us now for the last 2 years. The next slide talks about END's beliefs and attitudes about vaping. And so we asked them a number of questions like, is it as addictive as smoking cigarettes? Is it okay to vape socially? If you only vape socially, are you a vapor? Vaping is a great way to start a conversation. People look cool when they vape. It's not a big deal if friends vape. And for me, what I thought was interesting is that the percentages are pretty high, although it's pretty like 50%, some are right around that area. But it would have been great to see those numbers drop down after we do some messaging in terms of changing their beliefs and their attitudes. So right now, they're kind of in the middle and they could go either way. They could start believing that vaping is okay to do it socially, or they could change their mind and that percentage could go down. So it'll be interesting to see, because we will do an evaluation post of our media campaign that we start. Next slide, please. So this next slide is about reasons for vaping among current users. They like the feeling or the buzz. That was at 38%. To be cool was 29%. They're less harmful than other forms of tobacco was 16%. And they're easy to hide or be discreet. That was 16%. And they're available in tons of flavors. That was also at 16%. So those are like our top 5 things of the reasons why they're using these products. And so that just gave us, those are all things that we pretty much knew, but it was good to have that confirmation. Next slide, please. So what's next? We've completed the formative assessment, which is really great. It took us a long time. The formative assessment, we kicked off the formative assessment work in 2018. We didn't get started with our survey until 2019. We've wrapped that up in October, and things have been progressing very fast. We're now at the process, we're gonna start a campaign. We've done some testing of different ads using digital and social media. We've been on Snapchat, Instagram. We've been trying to get onto TikTok, or maybe we're on TikTok, I'm not quite sure, but we're on YouTube. So it's been pretty exciting to see the changes that have happened since last summer. We'll also be having an evaluation that'll be done throughout the campaign. And then just to let everybody know, we do have funding through June 30th, 2021. As of right now, some of our general funds are getting pulled. And so we're hoping, because of what we know about COVID and tobacco use, that we'll be able to keep our funding the way it is through 2021. Next slide. So as I mentioned, in 2018, we started having this kickoff of a number of partners. Some of you are on this call today, and I thank you so much for being a part of the formative assessment, doing surveys, helping us out, and doing the groundwork. It was really helpful. A lot of you had meetings with youth and actually did the surveys on site, which was really helpful in terms of knowing the use. At the time, we got slowed down because of funding and start and stops. So there was a group of us that still wanted to meet. Plus there was a House bill. If you're not familiar with House Bill 511, it changed the definition of what a vaping product is. And so because of that and all kinds of other things going on, a group of partners came together. And so this is a listing of all the different partners that have come together, spearheaded by, I would say, by the tobacco program, along with the Department of Education. We drafted a letter to schools in the fall, and that letter talked more about the changes in the law, as well as some resources. Next slide, please. So this is a vape resource list, and I believe if you click on it or click on the link below, Hannah, it'll take you right to the vape resource list. And I'm just going to run through a little bit about what's on the resource list. So it's a 2-page document. It's very brief. What I found with e-cigarette stuff across the country is that there's a lot of stuff. So we wanted to put some small stuff together. So on the first page is really your local and national links to different things. So we have the DHHS and Breathe New Hampshire, as well as the Northern New England Poison Control Center, the Surgeon General's report, along with the CDC. And then at the bottom are a few other programs that are really high influential places like Truth Initiative, smokefree.gov. California is always at the forefront of tobacco use. And then the Jewelers Against Juul link. On the second page is where we're gonna focus on curriculum. And if you're not familiar with the Catch My Breath program or MD Anderson Aspire program or the Stanford Medical, those are all different curriculums that you can use with youth that have been vetted and are really great to consider using. There's also a great Scholastic and FDA publication that came out last year that is really, I think would be really great for high school students. So there's some for middle school and some for high school. And then at the bottom, it just talks about the QUIT resources, which I'll go into detail what we have in New Hampshire, but there's some additional ones there through the Truth Initiative and smokefree.gov. And if you can go back to the presentation now. So this was a document that we put together as a group, and that's been on our website, and we're more than willing to share that resources with anyone. And if anybody has any suggestions, changes, or wants to be a part of the group, we're always willing to have new members. We haven't met in a while, and I don't think we've really set like what our goals are. We just kind of came together, created this document, and kind of trying to figure out what our next steps are. Next slide, please. So the My Life, My Quit program, which is tobacco cessation, or it's a way for youth to quit using tobacco products, was started in July of 2019 by the National Jewish Health, which is the vendor that we use for our quit lines. They came out with a pilot project to provide tobacco cessation, vaping cessation to youth. We weren't able to jump on the initial pilot project, but we jumped on in October. And so it's free and confidential phone, text, and online chat services for youth under 18 years of age who want to quit tobacco. Next slide, Hannah. I will say that the data is pretty minimal at this point. We haven't seen a huge increase in the numbers, but we have been doing a lot of messaging and media with CHI, also through some movie ads, which I'll show with you with the next slide. But it's really easy to use the program. You can either do one of three things. You can text Start My Quit to the number, you can call the number, you can visit mylifemyquit.com for an online chat. They help youth develop a quit plan, they cope with stress, they learn about nicotine, and they receive ongoing support. They've all been trained, the quit coaches have been trained through Stanford. There is no nicotine replacement therapies, but there's a lot of quit coaching and cognitive behavioral therapy. They get up to, I think they get 5 coaching sessions, but you can get as many as you'd like. There isn't really an ending for the youth program at this time. Next slide, Hannah. So as I mentioned, I think the program was really wanting to do more in terms of marketing. And so in December, we, along with CHI, was able to develop this Don't Let Vaping Take Your Last Breath, along with what was going on with the EVALI stuff throughout the country. We really wanted to make some sort of a splash and try to help the youth quit using vaping products. So we created this ad, and you'll notice that it is both, it's a man or a boy in the video, and it's not surprising because we thought that mostly boys were using the products than were girls. But if you click on the link, Hannah, that'll start the ad if you haven't seen it already. The ad has been viewed over 45,000 times, and it's still active on YouTube and on Facebook. Hopefully you can hear it.
I think that Hannah needs to unmute herself and then we might be able to hear it.
Sorry,
Okay.
just a moment. I'm going to make sure I'm sharing audio as well.
Thanks, Hannah.
Here we go, and
I was there for you, you for me. We always said that we'd never lie to each other. But we lied to ourselves when we believed that vaping was safe and we wouldn't get addicted. It is addictive, and it can even be deadly. Don't let vaping take your last breath.
Great, thanks, Hannah. You can go back to the slides now. So that was our first ad that we created, and we didn't use any kind of testing or checking in on whether or not it would resonate with anyone, but we did play it in over 12 different movie theaters between December and March. And as I mentioned, we have had over 45,000 hits, but it has not increased the number of callers to My Life, My Quit yet. So we're still just actively doing a lot of marketing and media along with My Life, My Quit New Hampshire. Next slide, Hannah. So in terms of My Life, My Quit resources, we have business cards, posters, as well as a social media toolkit, and we have tons of copies. So if you would like as many of these things as you want, I'm more than happy to ship them, bring them. I know it's a little bit different right now, but anything you need, we're more than happy to provide to you. And if you have some other ideas on promotional materials that you would like to see or would like to have, please let us know. Next slide, Hannah. So in terms of our other quit line, we do have an adult quit line, which is called Quit Now NH. It has multiple coaching sessions with live online chat or phone appointments. There is nicotine replacement therapy available, but one change that has happened is that we only give away NRT for those with Medicaid, Medicare, and the uninsured. We also have a provider web referral closed feedback loop, which is really helpful. And so we're still trying to get providers to use more online-based, although we've been primarily using fax forms over the last couple of years. The last thing I want to mention is that we do have 5 really great modules. They're online modules that are less than 30 minutes. At this time, I'm not sure, and I think talking to Jill and to Adelaide and to the other people on the call, in terms of what you need for contact hours, we just need to add those to our modules in terms of getting you the professional development. But there are 5 modules from the Ask, Assist, and Refer. There's information about what Quit Now is. There's also a module on motivational interviewing, pharmacotherapy, as well as post and prenatal in terms of tobacco use. There's some stuff on vaping, but I think we're going to be developing a 6th module in the next year to 2 years on vaping. So that's kind of a little bit of professional development that might be helpful to you. So if you are interested in those modules, please take a look at them and let me know if you're interested, and I will certainly work on getting those credits for you before you start taking those online modules. Next slide, Hannah. A little bit of demographic data on our Quit Now. We get about 100 adults that call every year. 92% of them enroll in the services. A third, typically when we follow up with them, are still tobacco free, and they also complete the services. We have it split in terms of demographics between men and women, about 58 women, 41% men. Their ages are between 35 and 65 years old. We do have a lot of people that self-report as having a mental health challenge, that have high anxiety, or report that they're depressed. So we are doing our best with trying to do some more marketing of the program to those audiences. So we're working with behavioral health centers as well as, I lost my train of thought, but hopefully it'll come back and I'll be able to tell you what I was thinking. But we're trying to work more with behavioral health centers as well as Medicaid populations and those that are uninsured for sure. Next slide, Hannah. So here's the fun part. I hope you all think it's fun, and I know it's last minute, and I know that we're all stuck at home, but I think if we can all be creative, I think we can give these sponsorships away. So I have about 7 sponsorships that I'm able to give away. Our timeline is May 1st, 2019 through June 28th. Some examples of things that you could do would be obviously cleaning up a park for vaping products, or producing an ad or a video on the dangers of vaping. But really the sky's the limit. Virtual community events to build awareness about e-cigarettes. Creation of tobacco use podcasts have been done by one of the mental health centers, so we're really excited about that. But you can be creative and definitely ask me if your idea would work. The deadline to apply is June 1st. The link is, I don't know if you can see the link because of the text, but hopefully you can see, there it is. It's a bit.ly link, and I can certainly put that, or somebody can put that in the chat box for you. It's a really simple form to fill out. And again, so just to be clear, the tobacco program's grant year is actually March of, or April 1st of last year through June 28th of this year. If by chance you did any kind of work on e-cigarettes or vaping and you think that might fit, please send in the application for that work as well, because we can sponsor you, in my opinion, going back as long as it was within this grant year. So we're really excited to have this opportunity and would love to be able to provide you with success and resources for your program. Next slide. I think this is the last slide. Just a picture of all of our staff from left to right. Susan Morrison, who's our community program manager. Teresa Brown, who is the Quitline vendor or Quitline coach person. Donna Asbury, who's our program manager. Pascal Kalin, who's our epidemiologist. And then I'm on the right as the communication specialist. We do have these banners, so if you know of anybody that's going tobacco-free, any businesses or organizations, and you want to see it on their site, we certainly are willing to donate these kind of banners for you to use as well. So something else just to keep in the back of your mind. And then my contact information is there. So thank you so much for allowing me to present to you today.
Thank you, Jess. That was really great. So much good information, but didn't feel rushed at all. I think that was really awesome. Thank you. There were a couple things that came through in the chat that I'll just flag for you, and then we'll also send you in an email so you don't lose track of it. But the Carroll County Coalition for Public Health wants a My Life, My Quit promotional packet. And Jennifer Selfridge is going to follow up with you to talk about effective messaging. So make sure to jot down Jess's information here so that you can follow up with her if that's what you'd like to do. I did want to say, I forgot to say it at the beginning, that now is the time for questions and discussion about Jess's presentation. And even though, you know, it's a little harder on a Zoom meeting, we just wanted to highlight that interaction and engagement and discussion now can still be really valuable and high in Zoom meetings. So I want to encourage you now to ask questions, whether that be through the chat function or verbally using the raise hand function, and I'm happy to call on you. And I will stop talking and leave it open to have time for people to chat in questions or raise their hand to ask Jess questions. We have about 15 or so minutes to ask Jess questions, so a lot of good time for discussion.
That's a great, I saw the question from Bridget about how the peer group categories were determined. And so that was really, peer groups are pretty much a national thing. It's, they're known in data and through, I sometimes don't have the right words, but it's written and evident about which peer crowds are which. And so that's kind of what we use in terms of knowing which peer crowds that we would be looking at. I know from some of the work that CHI has done in New Hampshire that they know that there are some additional peer crowds, like a kind of a different country local, but we didn't see that in the peer crowding formative assessment that we did. And I'd be happy to share with you some data. There's a bunch of articles about peer crowds through JAMA.
Thanks, Jess. I actually had a question, if it would be okay for me to ask it. You had said that there was some legislation in New Hampshire that changed the definition of a vaping product. Can you share what the new definition is?
Yeah, so the new definition just really added vaping products. So RSA 126K, which is the school law, included the definition of the word of all vaping products. And so restaurants can now no longer be using, they shouldn't have been anyway, but you're not allowed to be using vaping products in restaurants. Any kind of, it did change the definition in Indoor Smoking Act as well, because they did a reference.
Thank you. So I see Mindy's looking for clarification on the name of the Jewish organization that you mentioned.
Yeah, it's National Jewish Health. It's a hospital in Colorado, and they are one of, I think, 5 quitline vendors across the country that we're able to use, and they are New Hampshire's quitline vendor.
And then a question from Sarah. There are no silly questions, but looking at the increase in usage in the YRBS data, do we know if the wording of the question changed to include juuling, which may correlate to the increase in 2019?
I don't believe the wording included juuling. I don't think that changed, but certainly I can look into that right now. Okay, so Jill's saying the wording did not change. So yeah, so I don't think that changed anything, no.
Would anyone like to raise their hand and verbally ask Jess a question so we can hear someone speak besides the two of us? I'm looking for him. Well, I actually had another question, so I guess I'll continue. This might just be my ignorance about the topic. I learned a lot today, but you had mentioned that the My Life, My Quit line for youth doesn't offer the replacement therapies. Is that because those therapies aren't indicated for use in youth?
That is correct.
Great, thank you.
And it's technically, I think, a nicotine product, so we wouldn't want anyone under the age of 18 to be using a nicotine product as well, but I can certainly check with my colleagues who know way more than I do back at the office. I'm the newbie on the street when it comes to tobacco use. So I rely on Donna, Susan, and Teresa sometimes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Julie, have there been any questions in the chat that I might have missed reading out for Jess? No. All right, well, I'll give it another minute. Thanks. I'll give it another minute for people to ask. Oh, here comes one. So Vicky's asking, how have My Life, My Quit materials been distributed so far? Do schools or pediatricians' offices have the info, or would it be helpful for local coalitions to distribute to those groups?
Great question, Vicky. So they've been distributed primarily through schools at this point, I would say. I think a number of you have asked for materials. So that's been great. We did attend, I shouldn't say we, but our asthma control program did attend the pediatric conference this past year, and they did bring materials there, but that doesn't mean that they have them. So I think the opportunity for local coalitions to distribute to these groups would be fabulous. And when I say I have tons of materials, we ordered 10,000 copies of the posters. So please, if you're able and willing to distribute them, we would love that.
So it seems like Mindy has a question and she's unmuted. Mindy, are you going to be our brave soul to speak?
Yes, I'm purposely doing this to be brave. I am really. I'm just wondering if there's any statistic or information on support for adults quitting. You know, it's kind of why I got on this call, was to see what was available. There's a lot available for youth. Is there anything to access information about adults, for adults, and what populations that need more supports? Like, I actually think I know that from my life experience. I'm working in recovery, and a lot of people, you know, there's a lot of support needed in that arena. You know, you can't walk past a center or a place, and no matter what room you go into, everybody has the scent of smoke on their clothes. And I know it's a, you know, a coping mechanism to recover, but there may be ways to, I don't know. I just think that there's more needs for adults than we're, you know, acknowledging.
Yeah.
Intervention.
Mm-hmm. So we do have 1-800-QUIT-NOW or quitnownh.org, which is the main tobacco quit line, which is for adults. And for adults, they can get up to 3 coaching calls. If they're on Medicaid, Medicare, or uninsured, they can get nicotine replacement therapies. Mm-hmm. If they have another insurance, we do a warm transfer to that agency, and they'll be able to get the nicotine replacement therapies through them. But there also is that cognitive behavioral therapy that's offered through a coaching call. Okay, so, and is there further access to cognitive behavioral therapy for people beyond the coaching calls? Well, if there's tobacco, depending on where you live, I know that some hospitals do offer that, like in Cheshire County, and I think at Dartmouth, there is a tobacco cessation person on staff. So certainly let me know, Mindy, where, like, you can email me after the call, and I can get you in touch with Teresa Brown, who's the tobacco cessation person, and she would definitely be able to help you identify some additional supports. Thanks. Beyond the quit line. Okay, and I'd like just to be able to present that information, make it more accessible and visual and that kind of thing. Sure, okay, of course. Yep. Thanks.
Thanks, Mindy. We have another question in the chat asking, how does this information inform schools' restorative discipline response to incidents of vaping in schools? Usually, rather than a punitive response, schools like to have an educational restorative response.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking that question, because that was one of the things that I was hoping was going to come out. I know that at least in Franklin, and I again, I don't know the details about what they're offering, and I know in Merrimack Valley, they're also doing something else, but I would love to know more about what schools are doing in terms of doing the discipline and doing some sort of educational restorative response. I know in some cases they've been doing, like, look up those different curriculums that I shared earlier and kind of doing that piece. I know Teresa Brown has developed some sort of a training or a quiz or test for schools like that have lost their license and have to go to court. But other than that, we haven't moved that needle, but it would be great to move that needle before school starts, I think.
Thanks, Jess.
And just to, for Bridget, in terms of the quit line, a spike in calls, we have not seen a spike in calls, unfortunately, even on the quit line side. The tips for former smokers, which I'm pretty sure most of you probably are familiar with, those ads have launched, and we were hoping that we would get a spike, but we have not yet gotten a spike in calls yet.
Interesting how the pandemic, like, it's kind of that double-edged of, oh, it increases my risk, but oh, it's a coping mechanism, and life's really stressful right now.
It is really stressful.
We have time for a couple more questions, maybe 2 if they're out there. I'll give a little more time for those to come through. Let's see. Okay, I hope I'm not putting her on blast, but Candace, you did unmute yourself. Is that because you want to say something?
Yes.
Yay!
Hello, everybody. So I'm the coordinator for the Franklin Mayor's Drug Task Force in Franklin, New Hampshire. And so I I heard you just mention Franklin, and the restorative discipline response question. So we did actually design a protocol with our school system, and it was really a collaborative effort. We came up with it through our community management team. I'm very happy to share that with anybody that would be interested in it. But basically, if a student is caught vaping, they go through kind of an assessment process with the guidance counselors. And then from there, they do serve an in-school, this is for a first offense only, but they do serve an in-school suspension. And during that in-school suspension, they come up with an idea of how they can get more educated about vaping and what it does to your body and why it's not good for you, especially as youth. And so, for instance, one of our students is an older sister. And so meeting with the counselor, they were talking and she was like, I'm addicted to this. And so the counselor was like, what can we do? And she's like, well, I would really love to make a presentation for my younger siblings. So she actually created a PowerPoint about why vaping is not good. And she presented it. Of course, it was fact checked and everything, but she presented it to her younger siblings. So rather than being out of school suspended, she got to spend the time learning and creating and got more educated about everything. And so far, we've definitely had some hiccups with our protocol, but it's going well. And they're going to continue it on. It was approved by the school board unanimously, and it's been working very well. So thank you.
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks so much, Candace.
Any other last question or comments for Jess? Give it a minute in case there's typing or you need to find the unmute button. It's in the lower left. Mindy?
Yeah, I just wanted to just support what my question was for people's thought process, because I think a huge part of prevention for children and youth is finding support to help the parents quit. So I just wanted to say that in support of the thought process of why I asked the question to begin with. So
Definitely.
thank you.
All right, well, if there's any other questions that come in through the chat, we'll be sure to share those with Jess and get those in our Q&A document. So if you're newer to the community of practice, you might not know that Julie and Hannah right now, while we've been having this nice conversation, have been feverishly working on capturing all the questions that you're asking and all the answers that Jess is giving. And so that will be typed up and posted along with the slides and the recording of the meeting. So you can reference all the resources at the conclusion of the meeting. So feel free to keep them coming, and we'll get them in the Q&A if they're there. Hannah, can you go to the next slide for me quickly? So what we're going to do now is transition to the Youth to Youth presentation, which is going to mean that Hannah's going to stop her screen share and Youth to Youth is going to take over. So I just did want to note that when Hannah stops screen sharing, we will lose the captioning that you've been seeing because that's on Hannah's computer. I did send instructions on how to get the captioning on your individual computers, so that if you would like to continue that through the Dover Youth to Youth presentation, you're able to do so. But also we will have a transcription of the meeting available from our captioner, so that will get posted along with all the other resources I've said. So if you lose a little bit during this Dover Youth to Youth presentation, that will be available in the transcript as well. And feel free to chat me again privately if you have any questions about getting the captions on your own computer for the next presentation. And I'm happy to paste in my instructions into the chat box for you now, if that would be helpful. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dana Mitchell from Dover Youth to Youth to get started on our next presentation.
And hello, everyone. How's the audio, Adelaide?
I think you're good.
Oh, great. Welcome, everyone. Glad to be here. Thank you for having us. I know a lot of you, but not all. I'm the coordinator of Dover Youth to Youth, but for the purpose of today, I'm not the presenter. I have 4 students from Youth to Youth who will be actually presenting this, all from 4 different locations. I'm from a 5th separate location, and I'm handling the audio, visual, and all of that. So just wanted to let you know how that was set up, and I am the contact person if you have follow-up questions after this presentation. So I'm the point person if you wanted a copy of something, a script of something. We're really good about sharing, so as some of you know. So don't be afraid to get a hold of us and ask for anything that you see that we can possibly share. We're really glad to do that and provide any assistance to anyone out there working to establish youth empowerment and youth participation in the prevention activities in your own community. So be glad to help out. New Hampshire is the first place that we like to help out. And, I can clarify, help out on any questions at the end. But other than that, job is to take care of the AV and turn it over to my most capable students. And you guys are good to take it away.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Claire. And the general goals of today's presentation are just to kind of talk about the electronic nicotine devices that have been coming out recently and explain to you our message to our community on e-cigarettes and vaping.
So really quick before we get going in this presentation, we're going to talk about what Dover UT Youth is and how it is set up. So Dover UT Youth is an after-school extracurricular drug prevention program which has about 70 members ranging from 6th grade to seniors in high school. So those 60 to 70 members are split onto 4 different teams that meet for 2 hours apiece during the week. Each team has different projects that they work on, but they all come together and work on bigger projects as a group, as you can see on the PowerPoint.
So when it comes to our group, we have a specific youth empowerment model that we follow. So in this model, it is a knowledge, skills, action model. First, our youth are given the knowledge and skills that they need so they have the capacity to take action in their environment. And when we do take action, we take action in 4 main categories. These categories are education, community awareness, policy change, and media.
So we do awareness projects, and this can be as simple as our sticker project, but these can also be more complicated and go throughout years, like our brain campaign.
We also have a lot of media initiatives. So we have over 200 radio and video PSAs that have all been recorded by students.
And we also do policy change, and here in Dover, we have passed 3 state laws and 8 city ordinances.
Now, when it comes to education, we do a lot of different presentations, both classroom-style presentations, bigger assemblies, conferences for training, and traveling around the United States, giving training to other youth programs and webinars like this.
And the presentation that we're giving to you guys today is a variation of the e-cigarette presentation we give to youth in our community.
So over the last few years, we've all heard the words vaping and e-cigarettes.
And it has become a very big issue, billions of dollars a year, and still growing type of issue. And the youth market for these products has been growing incredibly fast.
So once upon a time, there were cigarettes, and about half of America smoked them. And this was because people believed they were inexpensive, relaxing, social, and sexy, mature, or cool.
People believe this because this is what the tobacco industry told us. They told us that their products were safe. They advertised using advertisements like this that said, "You're safer smoking Philip Morris." And they claimed that their products were pasteurized. You pasteurize milk to get out the bacteria, but pasteurizing tobacco will not get rid of all of the dangerous chemicals.
And they also told us that smoking was good for you. So in old ads from L&M cigarettes, just what the doctor ordered, and Viceroy saying that your dentist would recommend that you smoke, and Old Gold lighting a patient's cigarette. So what we're going to do now is we're going to show you a video that we show some of our students, and I want you guys, or I'm going to challenge you guys to take notice of how many times they say the word doctor.
What cigarette do you smoke, Doctor? Tens of thousands of doctors in all branches of medicine, in all parts of the country, were asked that question. What cigarette do you smoke, Doctor? The brand named most was Camel. Yes, surveys show more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. Smoke Camels, the cigarette so many doctors enjoy.
And the tobacco industry also told us that you'll be protected from using their cigarettes. So as you can see up on the PowerPoint, it says caught a cold, smoke cool.
They also told us that you'll be sexier and more attractive if you use their products. And you'll see that they use this in ads showing up on the PowerPoint.
And they also told us that you'll be more manly and macho.
They told us you'll have more friends.
And they even told us that you'll have more fun.
They also made the point to show us that you would be more athletic if you use their products.
They also made sure it was very clear that everyone knew that their products were for women too. With tobacco brands like Eve and L&M, they made it seem like you would be a strong, independent woman if you smoked their tobacco products. They also used campaigns like the Find Your Voice campaign that was targeted towards women.
But would they advertise to kids? These companies say no way, would never do that, but we've seen so many examples of them doing the exact opposite. For example, you have companies that are advertising with toys and companies that are advertising with trains and cartoons, like Joe Camel, and even before that, Willie the Penguin. You have them advertising in popular TV shows and movies, so Winston and the Flintstones. And you have them using candy flavorings that are really attractive to kids, like Twist a Lime from Camel. And you have them using packaging techniques to advertise to kids that are more attractive to youth. Like this one right here, definitely not advertising to my grandmother.
And then we all finally learned what the tobacco industry already knew, that tobacco is addictive and deadly. And in 1964, the US Surgeon General announced that smoking causes lung cancer. And ever since then, tobacco use by both teens and adults have gone down.
So when we look at this chart, we see that there's a steady decline of adult smoking since the 1960s. And youth smoking has been dropping steadily too since about the mid-1990s. And a lot of times, people were beginning to think that Generation Z was going to be the generation to eliminate tobacco use.
And just when it looked like we were really getting somewhere with these tobacco products, e-cigarettes and vaping devices appeared, and the use of them skyrocketed. So if you remember from the slide before this, you can see how there was a downward trend in tobacco products since 2011. But on this next one, you can see how between 2013 and 2014, the use of these products tripled. And also you can take a look at this chart and see how all of the other tobacco or other nicotine delivery products have the rate and use of them have declined throughout the decade, and how e-cigarettes skyrocketed above the entire curve of every other product.
Now, when it comes to e-cigarettes, where are we now? Well, vape and e-cigarette products are made in every shape, size, color, every variation, and they all work a variety of different ways. Now, I know you're all familiar with these products, but just a quick overview is that there are some that have cartridges that you use to refill with different flavors. There's more tank models that you put the flavor in from droplets, flavors like cotton candy, and all of that delicious flavors that obviously attract kids. There are some that are designed to be discreet or look like something else. Like this one is made to look like an inhaler, while others are discreet in different ways. They don't look like something else, but they can be held in the palm of your hand and barely noticed, like Soren and, as we all know, Juul. Now, these products are so popular, but the FDA recently put a ban on refillable flavored tobacco or flavored e-cigarettes. But the issue is there are disposable versions of these products too. And these are a loophole around the entire ordeal. For example, puff bars are now so popular with high school students because they can still get all of these watermelon and mango flavors without having the FDA restrict it because they are disposable. And I can say from experience that these puff bars are basically just replacing Juuls when it comes to high school students.
And some people might ask, but why do we care? And we have a lot of concerns about the use of e-cigarettes. For example, the poisonings from kids eating them and exploding batteries. And while these are very important to know, these are not really our major focuses.
Our first and primary concern is addiction and its relation to nicotine. So all e-cigarettes contain nicotine, which is the same nicotine, as you know, that's found in cigarettes, cigars, and other tobacco products. So the liquid in e-cigarettes contains the nicotine taken from tobacco plants. And nicotine is produced naturally in the tobacco leaf, and it repels insects that might want to eat the plant. So it's used as an insecticide because of these properties, and this is also what makes nicotine poisonous to people in larger doses. Fortunately for smokers, there isn't enough nicotine in a cigarette or an e-cigarette to kill you, just enough to affect your brain. But it is still highly addictive. Nicotine enters the body and moves very quickly from the lungs into the blood, and it's brought into the brain in just seconds. The shape of nicotine molecules allows it to react very easily and quickly with the cells in the brain. And because of this, almost all regular users become addicted to nicotine, and it happens pretty quickly. It doesn't matter where the nicotine comes from, whether it be an e-cigarette or a tobacco cigarette or another tobacco device. Nicotine equals nicotine, and nicotine equals addiction. It has a very significant effect on the brain and how it works, and it does more of this in teens because the brain is not developed completely until around the age of 22. So the brain is more vulnerable when it is younger and still developing.
And another concern that we tell our community is about lung health. So popcorn lung was the first issue that we ever heard, and it's caused by chemical flavorings. But as we saw use of e-cigarettes increase, the number of young people vaping also increased, as well as there are more cases of people getting sick and in some cases even dying. And we saw this as the problem getting worse.
So the third thing we're worried about is we don't know what we don't know. It took decades for the Surgeon General to eventually come out saying that they believe that tobacco caused cancer. E-cigarettes haven't even been around for that long. So we don't know what we need to know about them yet. First of all, there are chemicals in it that we know are food safe, but we don't know if they're safe to inhale. For example, a cheeseburger is perfectly safe to eat, but if you were to inhale that same thing, it would not be good. So we don't know about those chemicals. Plus, when heated, chemicals can change and cause different effects or inflammation, and we don't know the long-term effects of these. It's just something that there isn't enough testing on yet, and there's no way we could know. Now, it's also very, very difficult to test these e-liquids because, first of all, there aren't really any manufacturing standards, and there are so many different flavor combinations with different standards and different ingredients, and it's just very hard to be able to test them all. Also, the variety of different devices heated at different temperatures and can cause different changes to these already dangerous chemicals. And tests can only be conducted on the tissue of mice, not humans, so it's very hard to tell what the effects of these products are on the human body.
And our fourth concern is there is no reason why we should trust the tobacco or nicotine delivery industry. And you already see how they advertise their e-cigarettes by marketing it towards teens and kids.
So who do you think is making all of these brands of e-cigarettes? In many cases, it's these big tobacco companies that we mentioned earlier that are aggressively marketing their own e-cigarette brands. So some really good examples of e-cigarette products that are marketed by big tobacco companies would be something like this. Next slide, please. All right. So the company that made Newport cigarettes made Blue e-cigarettes. The company that made Camels made Vuse. And the company that made Marlboro cigarettes used to make Mark 10 until they spent $1 billion to invest in a third of Juul Labs. So why would these big tobacco companies want to make e-cigarettes? Exactly, it's to keep making money. With less people smoking regular cigarettes, they're losing money. And they're just trying to make money by selling nicotine through e-cigarettes. It's just another way to get their addictive product, which is nicotine, out onto the streets and make money off of people's addictions.
Now, addiction and cigarettes are something that we kind of put together. We all know that nicotine and tobacco are addictive. But let's see what some big tobacco companies had to say about their products and addiction in the past.
First, James Morgan, CEO of Philip Morris, maker of Marlboros.
And just for context for our listeners, this is an actual deposition taken from a lawsuit in Florida where a woman is suing the tobacco companies for her husband that got lung cancer. So this is actually court, under oath court deposition material.
Cigarette smoking addictive? I don't think that's a question that can be answered yes or no. I think most people would tell you that while cigarettes may be difficult to give up, there are not severe withdrawal symptoms. So pharmacologically, my answer is no. If they are behaviorally addictive or habit forming, they're much more like caffeine or in my case, gummy bears. I love gummy bears. And I just love them. And I want gummy bears, and I like gummy bears, and I eat gummy bears. And I don't like it when I don't eat my gummy bears. But I'm certainly not addicted to them.
Next, Andrew Schindler, head of R.J. Reynolds, maker of Camels.
Is it your view that cigarette smoking is addictive?
To me, what does that word mean? Today, we talk about addiction and everything from caffeine. I saw that there's a British researcher talking about the addiction to carrots in the Wall Street Journal.
Carrot addiction?
Yeah, there was a British researcher that did a research on carrots. I say to you that cigarettes are like caffeine, not like heroin and cocaine.
So they're not addictive.
I don't think the word applies.
Okay.
Neither did Dr. Alexander Spears, who runs Lorillard, maker of Kent's.
Is nicotine addictive?
Well, whether or not it's addictive depends on your definition of addiction. I think reasonable definitions of addiction must include the idea of euphoria, lack of ability to reason when under the influence of a substance. In other words, some sort of intoxication. Nicotine does not fit that kind of a definition for addiction. It's very much like caffeine.
Do you agree that there's a category of smokers who sincerely want to quit? They have tried to quit and they can't.
I'm not familiar with anyone like that.
So, first of all, they said that they believed that there were no hard, strong and powerful withdrawal symptoms that come with quitting nicotine. And if you or you know anyone who has ever tried to quit smoking, they would probably strongly say that that is incorrect. They also compared tobacco and nicotine to things like caffeine, carrots, and gum. So So it's very clear that they don't want to make it seem like their product is addictive because they just want money.
But maybe they learned their lesson. Maybe they won't advertise e-cigarettes like they did in the past, using their same old tactics, like making it look sexy or glamorous or cool and attractive to keep kids and teens.
Well, not really. Actually, it's really easy to see the similarities between those old tobacco ads and new e-cigarette advertising, starting with the themes and the images that we know will get teens' attention, such as sex, appearance, friends, and social acceptance. So notice how in the following e-cigarette ads that they have a similar style and the same feel to old tobacco ads. And as you look at e-cigarette advertising, I want to challenge you guys to decide for yourself if their content is honest and reasonable, or if they're just following the tobacco industry style.
As you can see in this ad up on the PowerPoint, it's this guy that is surrounded by a bunch of like his followers, and it says that you'll be the leader of the pack. And it's implying that you'll have both more friends and fun if you smoke their product.
They're also making it seem like you'll be more attractive. But realistically, will these e-cigarette products really make you look more attractive? And they're also using sex to sell their product by making it seem like you'll be more sexually appealing by using their products.
They also say that you'll be more independent or more your own person if you use their products. But nicotine would make you more dependent, the exact opposite of what they're talking about. So this e-cigarette ad says This one says experience your freedom, both using those words freedom, which tie in tobacco and e-cigarette advertising.
Now, some even address quitting. For example, this next one that says, why quit? Switch to blue. It makes it seem like there is no point of quitting using nicotine because these are healthy, safe, and good. They make it seem like their product has no harm and that there's no reason to quit because you have e-cigarettes. Now, they also make theirs seem like it is safe or healthy by saying that their product is healthier or that their product is safer and a better alternative.
Tobacco manufacturers have also added kid-friendly candy flavorings. And all of these things make us ask, are they trying to get kids' attention?
So it looks like e-cigarette makers are just trying to use the same old techniques to get us teens to see e-cigarettes as healthy and harmless.
So all of these reasons are why we care. Once we've agreed on what our concerns are, the next step is to well develop our message. In other words, how are we going to convey our concerns to kids, parents, and other community members? Here's what we've boiled it down to.
So, if we can go to the next slide, please. One of our messages is that nicotine is nicotine is nicotine. And the nicotine in e-cigarettes is the same nicotine in the old cigarettes and tobacco products. And it affects the brain the same way.
Another one of our points is that nicotine is highly addictive. So if nicotine is addictive, then e-cigarettes and vaping products are also addictive because there's nicotine in e-cigarettes and it is highly addictive.
Also, that once again, these products are so new and we don't know everything we need to know about them because they're relatively unstudied and we don't know what the specific harms of inhaling nicotine is, especially in this way where it's heated differently.
But what we do know is that some people are just destroying their lungs.
The tobacco industry and others who are selling their e-cigarettes are using the same deceptive techniques that they used to when they were marketing their original tobacco style cigarettes.
All right, so one puff dart is $11 and a pack of jewel replacement pods is $15. We all have a better use of our money than giving it to the nicotine industry, right? Is that really what we want to spend all of our money on, giving it to these liars? It's $15 here, $15 there. That's a lot of money.
And once you have your message, the final step is to take action. But what can we do? And the answer is we can actually do a lot.
Our group has taken quite a bit of action to address this problem, and you'll see our messages getting carried forward in our action steps. For example,
We have one good example of this that she was just talking about is our Logo Lampoon project. So this is a project where we go into our local 5th grade and we challenge students as an art project to create a spoof of a tobacco company, or by just changing the way the logo is, by changing the name of the product, changing the brand, changing the advertising techniques, anything like that to make it tell the truth about their product. So here are some entries that we got when we did this with the tobacco portion of it. We have Red Man chewing tobacco was turned into Dead Man, and cool cigarettes were turned into Not Cool. And as of the recent few years, we started expanding the guidelines of this project to include e-cigarettes. Actually, we encourage students to use e-cigarettes and spoof those products instead. So one more example of a tobacco would be Lucky Strikes was turned into Lucky Strokes. So one of the entries that we got, or some of them that we got when we did the e-cigarettes, was something like this. Juul was turned into Fool. And on the next one, you can see how there's another Juul spoof, and then a spoof of Blue.
And another thing that we do is we do education to the kids.
But first, we also do other community awareness projects, and one of which is our e-cigarette campaign. So this campaign was started with a big kickoff rally. So this rally included around 50 or so students, and they had signs that were made. We had specific lessons on how to make sure that anyone driving by would see the sign and get our message. So we had all of our students lined up in a road in downtown Dover, holding these signs and yelling prepared chants that we had so they could hear our message. Now, we also had teams of students with palm cards, but if you look at these posters, you can see that the messages we talked about are in all of these posters. Nicotine equals nicotine, and nicotine is addictive. But we had palm card teams as well that would hand out little cards with our messages on it to pedestrians walking by. So the pedestrians would take home our message as well as seeing our demonstration. Now at the end, we had a press conference, and we ended up the next day getting a front page newspaper article with a large colored photo in it. Now this got our message out, but our job was not done yet. A campaign is a sustained effort that lasts over a period of time around one singular topic. So we continue to do other work with media and spreading our message to other people in different ways.
And another thing that we do is we educate both kids and parents. So for the kids, we modified our 4th grade lesson to include e-cigarettes. And we also talked to the parents about about information on e-cigarettes, so that way they know what to say to their kids if the topic comes up.
And like mentioned earlier, Dover Utes Youth also does a lot of work within policy change. So we've proposed and passed a city ordinance which makes it illegal to use e-cigarettes where the city has already banned the use of tobacco products, such as athletic fields and around schools. So Dover Utes Youth was asked to propose this by Dover Youth Soccer, who had a problem with adults vaping at their sporting events. This proposal passed 9-0.
Now, we also passed a Tobacco 21 bill in our state, ordinance in our city, and this ended up passing 6-1. So we have a short clip of the testimony we did. So if you've never been to one of these or have never spoken in one, you can get an idea of kind of what it looks like.
Number 7, public hearings. 7A, Chapter 1, 1031, General Offenses, Section 23, sponsored by Mayor Weston.
Okay, this is the first of two public hearings of this evening. Speakers shall be residents of the City of Dover, property owners in the City of Dover, and/or designated representatives of recognized civic organizations or businesses located in the City of Dover. When you come to the podium, please identify yourself, and you will have 5 minutes to speak. Public hearing for the general offenses public hearing is now open. Anybody wishing to speak?
Good evening. My name is Hannah Marticello.
My name is Olivia Malone.
And my name is Elsa Rogers. And we are all members of the Dover Youth High School team. And we are here today to support the city ordinance that will raise the age of the purchase, use, and possession of all tobacco products, including e-cigarettes, to 21 years old.
We are concerned about the current age restriction on tobacco products. The current age to purchase tobacco is 18. By proposing this change to 21, it will increase the health and safety of youth in Dover. We feel like the age restriction should be raised because youth who have access to these products are more likely to suffer from the life-threatening or fatal consequences of tobacco and nicotine. With the current age of sale being 18, it means many, which provides sources and research supporting the points we are making this evening. Most teens who are between the age of 15 and 17 get their tobacco and nicotine products from someone under the age of 21. By raising the age to 21, a young teen would have to find someone or know someone who is at least that age that would buy nicotine products for them.
And I'm going to cut it off there. Just wanted to give you a little flavor of what that looks like. If you ever had some students that were going to testify before town selectmen or city council, it might look something like that, and the testimony could go like that. When our students testify, we do it in a team, either 2 or 3 student team, where they divide up the testimony. They work off of one document. They decide who's going to present which paragraph. That has a variety of advantages, and it also means that there's 3 of them there to try to field the question, that type of thing. And you'll probably notice that 2 out of the 3 people there are also on the presentation here, and that's entirely a coincidence. We have 70 members in the program, so it just happened to work out that way in this case. We can answer more questions on that process if there are any at the conclusion. You'll be able to chat the questions in. And back to you guys.
And we also use media to get our message out about e-cigarettes. So we create a lot of radio PSAs, and here's an example of one.
And now we get to listen in on a marketing meeting of a major cigarette company. Okay, team, tell me about this new product.
This is great, boss. It looks like a cigarette, but with no fire, no smoke, and no tobacco.
But it has the same old nicotine delivered right to the customer.
Same nicotine found in cigarettes and chewing tobacco, and just as addictive.
I love it. Once people try it a few times, we will have them trapped as customers. But what to call it?
How about Nicotine, the modern way to deliver nicotine into your body?
No, we don't want to remind people that we're providing them with a highly addictive drug.
I have a better idea, Addictatron.
Are you listening? We're trying to make money here.
I've got it, boss. Mystery butt, because we have no clue about the long-term consequences of using our product.
True, we really haven't studied it much, but that might scare people.
Here's my only other idea. We call it electronic cigarette or e-cigarette.
Perfect. It's hip, youthful, and harmless. I want it out in 3 weeks. Let's go.
Created and presented by Dover Youth to Youth.
And we also do video PSA. And here's an example of one that we did a couple years ago called Old Tricks.
Smokers, has this ever happened to you? Sick of spending all your hard-earned cash on cigarettes just to cough up a storm? Then try the brand new e-cigarette. The e-cigarette is the revolutionary new product that will retain or slightly worsen a few of the consequences associated with the use of regular cigarettes. By using the brand new e-cigarettes, you can deliver the same nicotine straight to your brain. Not to mention, they could still be just as dangerous to your lungs and health, because even we don't know what's in them. So don't worry, once you switch to e-cigarettes, you'll still be just as addicted and lose much money. So what if our product has most of the same health consequences as regular cigarettes? Compared to their predecessor, e-cigs are 10 times as strong. Check it out. Regular cigarettes are flimsy and break all the time. So to prove to you the strength and superiority of the e-cigarette, we're going to put them both to the test. Watch how this car completely obliterates the cigarette, but the e-cigarette is left undamaged. You've just witnessed the complete destruction of the regular cigarette. Now, witness the awesome might of the e-cigarette. It's totally fine. So you can bring these money-sucking, addicting, unhealthy cigs into your home today. Just call the number on your screen now. Order your e-cigarettes today. Call 1-800-BAD-IDEA now. Warning, keep out of the hands of children. Product barely regulated by FDA and is known to include gross poisons like antifreeze. Product contains the same nicotine found in cigarettes, chewing tobacco, and other tobacco products, and is made by the same companies such as Philip Morris, RJ Reynolds, Laurier, and more. We still care about your money more than your house. Order now. Again, that's 1-800-BAD-IDEA. Your money is all that matters.
So that video was a bit of spoof and satire to get our point across about e-cigarettes. But we're going to take a second to quickly go back and talk about a policy change effort we've taken that we accidentally skipped over earlier. So this is our FDA flavored tobacco products project. So this project started with a petition that the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids put out that was talking about flavored tobacco products. And you could sign this petition online and say that you agree that the FDA should ban flavored tobacco products because they attract kids and teens to use their product. We decided it would be cool if we had some way that we could show the FDA visually how many people believe in this cause. So we printed out these little cards, and the cards say, "We are calling on the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to ban the sale of flavored tobacco products, including flavored electronic cigarettes and cigars. This will help and menthol cigarettes." So at the bottom, it had a section where people could sign it saying that they believe that the FDA should ban these flavored products. We got a few hundred of these signed. We put them in a box and we sent them with a cover letter to the FDA talking about why we feel this is a problem and why we think this ban is something that needs to happen. We ended up getting an email back inviting us to go down to the FDA and speak to them about why we think this is an issue and just our perspective as teens. A team of 5 students ended up going down and talking with them. We prepared an entire presentation together, and we talked about all different tobacco and nicotine products and how they affect schools and why we think flavor ban would help to prevent the amount of teens using these products. This started as a small project just in our hometown, but it ended up getting a message to the people who actually had the authority to make decisions and change things in our community.
And more recently, we've been working on our Puff Bar project. So as Elsa was talking about the FDA ban, this ban was on most flavored nicotine products, but it excluded disposable things like Juul that has cartridges. We're no longer allowed to make products that had flavors in them, but Puff Bars is a good example of a disposable product that does not use cartridges, so they were able to continue using flavorings in their products. So this is something we're worried about. As we said earlier in the presentation, the focus of like teen e-cigarette use has switched over from Juul to Puff Bar, at least from what we've noticed. And we think that this is a very big issue because students are still having the same access to nicotine as they did before. So what we did is we drafted an informational, sheet, and we sent it to the governor's office, I believe. And this was so that we could start getting a little bit more action on trying to ban these and kind of expand the ban to disposable products. And we are also now working on a press conference so that we can get this information out into our community about how the ban of the FDA needs to be a little bit better written and constructed so that it also excludes disposable e-cigarette products.
So this whole project started when we had a conference call with Senator David Waters and Congressman Chris Pappas. And when we spoke to them about how we thought this was an issue, they realized that it was something that they didn't know much about, and they didn't know how huge of an issue it was among teens that in high school and even middle school. So they reached out saying that they would like if they could get more information on this so we could help them understand the topic so they can possibly make change towards it in the future. So that's what we have for our presentation today. And we have so many resources also. So like Mitch said earlier, if you need to reach out in any reason to get a script or anything like that, we would be glad to help you. And at this time, we're going to be taking questions, but first we're going to do a quick introduction of the presenters.
And just before you do that, before you leave the Puff Bar thing, I found it very interesting. Claire, you actually tested to see if you had a gift card, a Visa gift card, would it be possible for a teenager to buy a Puff Bar? Why don't you explain exactly what you did and what you found?
All right, so we were thinking that a lot of teenagers may not have access to like a debit card or a credit card of their own where they can kind of hide purchases from maybe parents, but a lot of kids, it's very easy for them to get access to a Visa gift card so that they can make online purchases. So we were wondering if the Puff Bar website would allow a minor to make that purchase. So I had a gift card and I attempted to purchase some Puff Bars off of the official website and a few other like online smoke shops. And all of them at checkout, until you get to checkout, the only thing that stands in your way of seeing the website is a little pop-up when you first go on asking you if you're of legal smoking age in your state. And there's no verification or anything required with that. It just, you click yes or no. And if you click no, it just sends you back to like the page with all of the things that came up when you search Puff Bar. And if you click yes, you can have access to the website. And then once I got to checkout, I was going through and you have to put in all of your information, like your card number and your address and everything. And then you have to verify your age before you can place your order. So I went in and it asked for a birthday. So I put in my birthday, but with the date of like my birthday, I put in like 1999 or something so that it would show up as me being 21. And then they required a valid ID with the same birthday on it to be like a picture of it to be like uploaded to the website so that they could verify your age. So obviously there are ways around this, but at least for me, if I were a teen looking to get a Puff Bar, that would have been like a stopping point for me because I don't have friends or siblings over the age of 21, and at least I wouldn't be someone who would take a parent's ID. But we noticed that this was something that was at least restricting the use or the ability for kids to get these devices. And it's not only on the official Puff Bar website, there are other smoke shops that also have this in place online. So.
And for anyone that's wondering what does it look like, if you can see my screen, I have one in my hand. It was purchased by here at Smiley's in Dover on Main Street, and it is vaguely reminiscent of the shape of a Juul, and it fits in pretty much in my hand. So it comes in a variety of different colors. This one happens to be pink because it's the pink lemonade flavor that one of our staff people bought it right here in Dover. So they're out there and available, and sort of thought you'd be interested to see that if you weren't already familiar. And Okay, sorry for interrupting you. Go back to, they're probably wondering what grade you're in, how old you are, how long you've been in the program. Introduce yourselves.
So my name is Elsa. I'm a sophomore in high school, and this is my 5th year in Dover Youth Youth.
I'm Claire. I'm also a sophomore at Dover High School, and this is also my 5th year in Dover Youth Youth.
My name's Orion. I'm in 8th grade, and this is my 3rd year in Dover Youth Youth.
And my name's Olivia. I am a junior in high school, and this is my 6th year in Dover Youth Youth.
Mitch, how many years have you been in Youth Youth?
Okay, you guys did a great job, and we're open for questions if anyone has any questions.
Thank you, everyone. If we could electronically clap, I think we all are. So thank you. I'll give it a couple minutes for questions to come in through the chat. And of course, feel free also to raise your hand with questions for the presentation. You're getting a lot of thank yous and well dones, but we'll look for questions.
On that e-cigarette rally that we did, just while people are deciding if they have a question, I'll play a quick clip just to give you an idea of what the visual of that was. It was right smack in downtown Dover, and if you were driving by, it would look a little bit like this.
One, don't try to hide the truth. Candy flavors target you. Don't try to hide the truth. Candy flavors target you. Don't try to hide the truth. Candy flavors target you.
And what you can notice there is there's not any adults in the mix there. It's the ones leading the chants are older youth members, and so that there's adults there supervising things, but they're sort of in the background. So just to also add on to the idea of resources and so forth, if you are working with youth and you ever would like any of the resources, they're readily available. Our radio public service announcements on a variety of topics, not just nicotine, are available and can be re-recorded using our scripts, and changed, modified, put your own tag on it. As well as a lot of other resources that are out there. The Dover Youth is applying for a grant under the Service to Science program, and funds are being made available. If we get that grant, what we've said, since we've already gone through the Service to Science process and are on the evidence-based list here in New Hampshire, we said that if we were funded to do that, that what we would do is assist others with implementation. So we would try to identify 2 or 3 locations that where we would use the funds to help them get started, either because they have a kind of a small club and they would like to get more advanced, or they desire to have a youth involved in prevention, but they just haven't had the capacity to do so. And the grant would provide a little bit of money for a stipend for an advisor and a technical assistance from us in helping me get started and organized and up and running. So we don't have that grant yet, but if we do, we'll be reaching out to people saying, does this pose any interest for anyone out there? So we will get that word out there for looking for that. And if anyone out there says, oh, that sort of describes us, you can feel free to send me an email saying, hey, if you get that grant, we'd be very interested in talking to you about some working together on that. So that's, and as well as any other support we could provide anyone trying to do that.
Thanks, Dana. It looks like in the chat someone asked, and I don't know if you saw it, and that's kind of, you answered it. I don't know if, like, right as it came in, about contacting you to get resources shared. And Jennifer Selfridge also shared that she had you guys come to Carroll County a couple of years ago, and you were really great. So you can get copies or schedule trainings through Dana, who has his contact information up on the slide now. Other questions for this group while we have them in their very valuable time? All right, well, we'll see if any more come in chat, if people are typing or not. But I just want to thank Dover Youth to Youth again for this really great presentation, and just how in awe I am of all of it, how smooth it goes, all the work you guys do. It's incredible. And you guys are in school on top of it all. This isn't even your job. So thank you all so much for taking the time. What we'll do now, we'll see if any more questions come in, but we will transition the slides back to Hannah, so I can just kind of finish up with our housekeeping items. But please feel free, we have a couple minutes to ask the Dover Youth to Youth presentations, or Jessica, any more questions. Oh, Mindy came in with one. So a question for the presenters is, what are the reactions from your peers that you are in Youth to Youth? Is that the question, Mindy? Oh, that are not in Youth to Youth. Okay. Gotcha.
So it is a very mixed thing. It's different for everyone depending on who their friends are and everything like that. For me personally, I've never really gotten pushback for youth use. Lots of times we do have presentations where after people, specifically one presentation we have about alcohol awareness, where people are like, is this stuff and that actually real? Because it made them worried, because that's kind of the type of presentation it is. It's more of a mature presentation. So lots of times we do get students that are genuinely, like, they understand our message and agree with it. But we obviously, as anyone doing anything is going to get, we do have some peers that will, some of which it's more of they're embarrassed by the fact that we called out something that they do. And lots of times they will almost retaliate in the form of being like, everything you said is fake. But I've never had any really big problems at all. Claire, I know you were in the first team to do e-cig, so.
Yeah, so, well, I was in 8th grade. I was part of the first team to do the e-cigarette presentation, which happened to be to the 8th grade. So that was interesting because, like, obviously a lot of my peers, like, that are my friends, either were in Youth to Youth or, like, I'm friends typically, like, with the kids that aren't doing things like that. Like, it's just kind of the way that things worked out with my friend group. But, like, obviously there are people that confronted me after, because it's the way that it is a lot of times. But there were people that confronted me after saying, like, oh, like, none of that is true. Like, why is that stuff that you're putting out? Like, where are you getting your information? And then there were sometimes, like, there were people that were flat out calling, like, Dover Youth to Youth stupid. And I was like, it is what it is to a certain degree. And there are always people that are going to be going against what you're saying. But I think that it kind of, like, if you care enough about what you're doing, then it doesn't really matter. And then all of my friends are supportive. I mean, I'm known as kind of like the goody two-shoes of the group. It's a big joke, but it's not, like, all of my friends know that this is something that I'm serious about and that I care about. So it has never come up to be like a negative thing from my friends or peers.
Do you think you're having any positive effects, even though things are not being said to the student body that you're with?
I think that there are definitely positive effects of the things we're doing, especially, like, when we do presentations, we're not necessarily targeting the people that are already doing things. We're just kind of trying to inform people that may kind of be in the middle of, like, oh, do I want to do this or do I want to not? So I think that we're making positive impact with everything that we do. And as long as we're helping one person, then it makes everything worth it.
Right.
And a lot of the work we do is also more focused at younger students. Like, we have our Samantha Skunk presentation and things like that. And those, I feel, very much do resonate very well with those younger kids. because they look up to us as role models in cool high schoolers or middle schoolers. So I feel like those are very, very effective. And like Claire said, when it comes to our peers, it's helping those kids that are on the borderline of making the decision on whether they want to use these products or not.
Thank you. Excellent. That's an excellent point.
Thank you all. Any other questions for Dover Youth Youth? Oh, sorry, Dana, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, a lot of the things they do as well have a broader impact. So if they change an ordinance on where you can use it, or if they have an impact on a state law in some way, then that's really applying universally across the community or across maybe even the state. So a lot of the media they plays on local radio stations. It gets broadcast halfway across New Hampshire, so that the impact locally is kind of washed out with the impact that it might have well beyond that. So we've had a great relationship with we have several radio stations in Dover that's based in Dover. They're really good to us about getting the messages out. So.
That's awesome.
There was a question.
Oh, Elsa's on it.
Oh. There was a question from Ashley asking how we discovered the program. So for me personally, and a lot of the people in Youth, there is a presentation that Youth presenters do every single year to the 5th grade. It's a History of Lives presentation. It's very similar to the beginning of this presentation, but longer. And this presentation is done by a few high school and middle school students, and it's to the entire 5th grade. And at the end, they hand out papers that are advertising our summer program we do. And for me, I'm a theater kid, very loud, have a lot of energy. And I just thought the idea of getting up in front of people and presenting was amazing. I thought these people were superstars, that they were able to do this all the time. And that's part of the reason why I joined, and that's where I heard of the program. And then also it's something that is very close to my heart. So seeing them present just made me realize how much I wanted to do that.
So there's that Elsa got recruited by, that presentation, but also as 5th graders, there are a few 5th graders that are chosen to do a presentation with Youth to Youth. That's the skunk presentation that I think was mentioned earlier. And Dana, Mitchell, and some other of the DARE officers and the resource officers in our school can select students from their classes, which happened to me, and I was part of a presentation with a few other 5th graders before we were technically Youth members. And that kind of just showed everybody that I was with part of the group, and I'm pretty sure everybody that was in that, aside from 1 or 2 people, ended up joining the group.
At least for me, my sister, I have an older sister, she's now on the college team, but she joined Youth to Youth in 6th grade, and I kind of grew up, we're 4 years apart, so when she was in 6th grade, I was in 2nd, so I kind of grew up seeing her doing these drug prevention presentations and working in not working, but volunteering in the field of prevention. And I thought that it was really cool what she was doing, and I got very interested in it quickly. And then Elsa, what Elsa was saying, the presentation to the 5th grade was kind of what hooked me in a little bit, because I really got to see an actual presentation that wasn't Samantha Skunk or Truth, and what they got to do. So I kind of got hooked on it from there, and I went to summer program and I fell in love with the program, so that's why I stayed in.
Thanks, Claire. Thanks, everybody. So with that, I'll kind of close it out with our last couple of housekeeping items. So as I mentioned, because we have a remote meeting today, the process for your evaluations is going to be a little bit different. So either this afternoon or tomorrow, you're going to get an email from me that will have a link to a SurveyMonkey with your evaluation for today's meeting. And then when you complete that survey and you hit submit, it's going to redirect you automatically to a Google form. Your Google form and your survey are not tied at all, so your survey still remains anonymous to us, but in the Google form, you'll enter enter your name and your email address, and then your attendance certificate for your CPS credits will be emailed to you. If you have any questions about that process after you receive the email, or if you don't receive the email by Friday, please shoot me an email. And then the last slide, Hannah, that I just wanted to put out for everybody was to thank our planning team and our presenters for putting together a really great meeting. So, well, Melissa is not here, as you guys know, she's still on maternity leave. So Julie and I have been, and Hannah have been covering for her. But so I'm Adelaide Murray, and my colleagues at CHI that helped put those together were Julie Yerkes and Hannah Lessels. Then we also wanted to thank Jill Burke from BDAS and Beth O'Connell from the Upper Room in addition to all of our really, really great presenters today. So as I mentioned, we'll get the slides posted and the recording posted and the Q&A posted, and we'll send you your evaluations via email. So thank you all, everyone, for taking the time today. And thank you again to our presenters. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.